Imagine, like for just a second, that you are tasked with executing the ultimate public relations campaign.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right, and we are talking about the biggest creative brief in the history of the universe. Your client is God.
No pressure there.
None at all.
Yeah.
And your job is to write this massive epic that justifies, the ways of God to men.
Right.
You basically need to explain to humanity exactly why the world is the way it is, why there is disease, why there is suffering, and why this entire grand design actually makes perfect, unassailable sense.
Which is just a spectacularly tall order. I mean, you are essentially trying to solve the philosophical problem of evil.
Yeah.
And you're trying to do it in the format of a 17th century poem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you sit down to write this masterpiece, right? This ultimate defense of supreme authority.
Right.
And naturally, you have to bring in the villain.
You need an antagonist.
Right. Someone who represents everything wrong, rebellious, and just completely destructive. But as you draft the narrative, something incredibly strange happens.
It backfires.
It totally backfires. You start writing this villain, and you make him so compelling, so charismatic, and so fiercely defiant that for the next few centuries, people read your PR campaign for God and end up completely captivated by the bad guy.
Yeah, he creates a villain so mesmerizing that generations of readers have scrutinized the text, asking if the devil is actually the hero of the story.
It's wild.
It is, and that tension is where the real genius of the text actually lies. We're talking, of course, about John Milton's 1667 Paradise Lost.
And his deeply complex depiction of Satan, which, again, is a catastrophic failure if your goal was purely a theological defense of God.
Right, from a pure PR perspective, it's a disaster.
Exactly. But to understand how a devout Puritan poet accidentally, or I don't know, maybe intentionally turned the ultimate villain into a profoundly sympathetic character, we're taking you with us through a stack of really fascinating academic sources that analyze this exact phenomenon.
It's quite the journey.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this, because to really grasp the whole debate over whether Satan is a hero, we have to look at the psychological trap Milton sets for you, the reader, in the very first books of the epic.
Yeah, the way Satan is introduced is just crucial. I mean, when we first meet him, he's not some cackling, one-dimensional monster.
Not at all.
He has just suffered the most catastrophic military and spiritual defeat imaginable. He rebelled against God's omnipotence, lost, and has literally been hurled from the glories of heaven down into a lake of fire.
A literal lake of fire.
Right. He is chained on a burning lake, surrounded by his defeated army of fallen angels.
And the instinct for any writer would be to show him groveling or whining about...
begging for mercy.
Exactly. But instead, Milton endows him with these classic, almost Greco-Roman heroic traits. He is just brave in the face of total annihilation.
He really is.
And he's fiercely loyal to the angels who fell with him. He even sheds tears for their suffering. But his true superpower isn't like his physical endurance.
No, it's his rhetoric.
Yes. His rhetoric. Even chained in a lake of fire, he delivers these soaring, defiant speeches about having a mind that cannot be changed by place or time.
He just absolutely refuses to be broken. He tells his followers that the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven.
It's just brilliant.
It is. When you read those early books, you were presented with an underdog rallying his troops against overwhelming odds. Milton is deliberately giving us access to Satan's internal monologue, the perspective of how Satan views his own crusade.
And it's designed to be completely intoxicating. Like, it's giving me major charismatic startup founder energy.
Oh, that is a great way to put it.
Right. It's the guy on stage with a headset microphone pacing around, promising to, disrupt the universe.
Yes, the ultimate disruptor.
Exactly. He's got the vision, the passion, the burning grievance against the total monopoly of the establishment, which in this case is God.
Right, the ultimate monopoly.
And he speaks with such absolute conviction that his rhetoric just sweeps you up. You find yourself nodding along to his TED Talk in hell, getting completely hyped up.
You're ready to invest.
Totally ready to invest. And before you realize what you're agreeing to, you've bought into a completely toxic, destructive business model.
That startup analogy captures the illusion perfectly. I mean, Satan is selling a vision of disruption. But what's fascinating here is the theological mechanism actually operating behind the scenes of that disruption.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, the academic sources we were analyzing point heavily to a concept called Felix Culpa.
Felix Culpa.
Right, which translates to the fortunate
A
fall.
fortunate fall. I mean, that sounds like a total oxymoron. How can humanity's fall from grace be fortunate?
It does sound contradictory, but it requires looking at the grand calculus of Milton's universe. The concept argues that Adam and Eve's transgression, which Satan engineers, of course, was undeniably a tragedy.
Sure, because it brought death and suffering into the world.
Exactly. However, if they had never fallen, humanity would have remained in this state of untested, naive innocence.
Like they wouldn't really know what good was because they hadn't seen the alternative.
Right. The fortunate fall implies that choosing goodness after experiencing and understanding evil is a far superior form of virtue than simply being good because you just don't know any better.
Wow. So innocence is really just a lack of data. But virtue requires the actual choice to reject the bad data.
That is the theological math, yeah.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the fall necessitates redemption.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, without the fall, there is no need for divine grace. There is no ultimate display of divine love. So Satan believes he is winning. He thinks his disruption of Eden is a massive, permanent victory against God.
But paradoxically.
Paradoxically, his rebellion is the exact catalyst required to unleash God's grandest plan for humanity. Satan is essentially beta testing God's system.
Oh my God.
And his sabotage merely initiates the ultimate upgrade.
Which would drive our startup founder absolutely crazy.
Oh, he would lose his mind.
Just the realization that your big disruption was actually factored into the incumbent's business plan from day one.
Yes.
But, if his rhetoric is this intoxicating, and the whole point of this epic was to defend God's plan, why did Milton give the devil the best lines?
It's the million-dollar question.
It feels like he is sabotaging his own stated mission. Why write the devil to be so compelling?
To crack that open, we really have to examine the historical context of Milton's own life, because the parallels between the author and the antagonist are just glaring.
Okay, lay it out for us.
When Milton was composing Paradise Lost, he was entirely blind and living in a state of sheer political defeat. He actually had to dictate these 10,000 lines of blank verse aloud.
Out loud?
Yeah, to family members and aides who just transcribed it for him.
Dictating a 10,000-line epic from memory is a staggering intellectual feat on its own.
It is almost incomprehensible, but the political defeat is what matters most here. You see, Milton was a radical revolutionary. He wrote major political tracts like The Tenure of Kings and Magistrates, and in that, he actively justified the execution of King Charles I.
Wow. Okay, so he wasn't just talking a big game.
Not at all. He also wrote Areopagitica, which is this fierce defense of free speech against censorship. He spent his whole life fighting against the divine right of kings.
So he hated monarchs.
Hated them. He argued that oppressive monarchs and the rigid hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church were tyrannical structures that just needed to be overthrown by the people.
Wait, hold on. Milton spent his life trying to overthrow literal kings. He defended beheading a monarch.
Right.
But in his poem, God is the ultimate unquestionable king of the universe. Doesn't that accidentally make Satan the charismatic rebel trying to overthrow the king like the stand-in for Milton himself?
You have just hit on one of the most famous literary critiques in history.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It is a conclusion that the poet William Blake famously articulated over a century later. Blake declared that Milton was, quote, of the devil's party without knowing it.
Of the devil's party without knowing it. I mean, for a devout Puritan who set out to justify God, that is a brutal accusation.
It is a profound accusation. And the sources see how this idea just caught fire later on during the Romantic period.
Oh, the Romantics.
Right. Romantic writers like Percy Bysshe Shelley despised rigid established authority. They championed individual liberty and the development of the self.
So they looked at Satan and saw a kindred spirit.
Exactly. To the Romantics, Satan's rebellion wasn't a story about the origin of evil. It was this magnificent pursuit of individualism. They looked at Satan tearing down a hierarchical structure that felt deeply oppressive and saw a hero breaking the chains of a dictatorship.
So if you view God purely as a political king, Satan looks like a visionary freedom fighter. He is the ultimate rebel.
That is exactly the temptation Milton builds into the text. He wants you, the reader, to feel the allure of that rebellion. But the academic consensus from our sources argues that stopping there completely misreads Milton's political philosophy. If we dig deeper into the text, we find that Satan's ideology is the exact opposite of that romantic ideal of freedom.
Here's where it gets really interesting, folks, because you're telling me the poster child for revolution, the guy who essentially invented rebellion, isn't actually a revolutionary.
Not even close.
Okay, explain that.
One of our key sources draws on the scholar Wayne A. Rebhorn, and Rebhorn provides this brilliant analysis of Satan's fallen mentality, particularly in Book 4 of the epic.
What does he say?
Rebhorn points out that Satan suffers from this inability to perceive spiritual realities. He reduces the entire universe to base political power dynamics.
So he just sees everything as a power grab.
Yes. Satan looks at God and doesn't see supreme goodness. He just sees a tyrant practicing divine nepotism.
Divine nepotism. Oh, because God elevated his son to be the ruler of the angels.
Yes. Satan feels he was passed over for that exaltation. So when he rebels, he isn't trying to create a true democracy.
Oh, I see.
He isn't trying to free the oppressed angels from tyranny at all. He is justifying his war on paradoxically conservative grounds.
So he wants to go backward.
Exactly. He wants to restore a past order where he was at the very top of the angelic hierarchy. He doesn't want to break the wheel. He just wants to be the one spinning it.
So he's not a visionary at all.
Yeah.
He's just a disgruntled middle manager who got passed over for the corner office.
That's exactly what he is.
Right. He thought he was next in line to be VP. The CEO gives the promotion to his own son. So this middle manager throws an absolute tantrum, sets fire to the break room, rallies the interns to walk out with him.
But fallen angels.
Right, the interns. And he frames the whole thing to them as a righteous revolution against corporate tyranny. But he loves the corporate ladder. If they offered him the corner office back tomorrow, he'd take it in a heartbeat.
That captures the hypocrisy perfectly, and it highlights the clash with Milton's own core ideology, which was Christian humanism.
Okay, remind me how that fits in.
Well, Milton's revolutionary attitudes were rooted in the belief that a person's position should not be derived from a static, inherited hierarchy. For Christian humanists, status should depend entirely on merit.
And how is merit defined in that context? I mean, it isn't about how many battles you win or how many angels report to you, right?
No, not at all. Merit is identified entirely with moral and spiritual achievement. It is about your proximity to divine goodness and your alignment with virtue.
So it's an internal thing.
Exactly. It's dynamic. You grow into it. But Satan, trapped in his fallen mentality, just completely misconceives the universal order. He wrongly derives merit simply from his previous rank.
Like holding on to an old job title.
Yes. He thinks he deserves to be exalted just because he used to be Lucifer, the brightest angel, regardless of the fact that his internal morality is literally rotting away.
His entire revolution is fundamentally selfish. It is not about liberty for the masses. It is about his own wounded ego.
And what makes him a tragic figure is his acute awareness of this trap.
Wait, he knows he's being hypocritical.
Oh, absolutely. In Book 4, Satan has a soliloquy on Mount Niphetes where he admits he knows exactly what he needs to do to regain his place in heaven.
Interesting.
He knows the mechanics of grace, but his revelation is twisted by his ego. He realizes that to repent, he must submit to God's authority, and he conflates repentance with slavery.
Wow. So the act of saying, I was wrong, feels to him like saying, I am your property.
He literally says, which way I fly is hell, myself am hell. His pride is a prison.
That is so dark.
It really is. Because he has a conservative agenda aimed at restoring his personal status quo, he frames his conflict as a fight for liberty just to mask his own overwhelming pride. Milton uses Satan's rebellion as a satirical portrayal of what humans think revolution is.
Like loud, violent, and self-serving.
Exactly. Versus true revolution, which Milton believed was internal, moral, and aligned with goodness.
But, because his internal motivation is completely corrupt, he can't maintain that glossy, heroic exterior forever.
Yeah.
If he is rotting on the inside, the outside has to catch up eventually.
And it does in a very visceral, structural way throughout the epic. Our sources cite scholar John M. Stedman, who focuses heavily on Satan's physical and moral transformation. Stedman actually refers to this process as a decreation.
Decreation. The unmaking of his own form. How does that physically manifest in the poem?
It is this downward spiral of degradation. When we first meet him on the burning lake, he still retains the majestic ruins of his angelic form.
Like a fallen star.
Right. He looks like a sun eclipsed by clouds. But as his actions become more deceptive and petty, his physical vessel degrades. To sneak into Eden, he takes the form of a cormorant, which is a bird of prey.
It's a bird.
Then he degrades further into a toad, squatting by Eve's ear to whisper poisonous dreams into her mind.
Oh.
And ultimately, he is reduced to a snake crawling on its belly.
His physical body is literally keeping a tally of his moral compromises.
Exactly. His heroic virtues turn into their contrary vices. His initial bravery becomes desperate, sneaky malice. His leadership becomes pure manipulation. He is hell-bent on perverting all the good God has created. And the mechanical consequence in Milton's universe is that evil is ultimately self-consuming.
But, okay, while he is delivering these incredible speeches early on, before he turns into a toad, how does Milton keep the reader from fully falling for the trap? Is there like a safety net built into the poetry?
There is. Another scholar we're reviewing, Jamal Subi Ismail Nafi, points out this subtle safety net that Milton weaves into the narration.
How do you do it?
Nafi highlights that Milton intentionally drops these brief, harsh, almost journalistic corrections right in the middle of Satan's most glamorous moments.
Oh, really? Give me an example.
So, for instance, Satan will deliver a magnificent speech about freedom, and the narrator will immediately follow it by saying he spoke with tears such as angels weep, or that his words were full of scorn and spite.
Oh, wow. It's like Milton is the director pausing the movie, grabbing the reader by the shoulders and saying, hey, don't just listen to the melody. Pay attention to the lyrics. Look at the malice behind the words.
That's a perfect way to put it. The narrator acts as the moral compass we are supposed to rely on. The comments seem jarringly out of tune with the soaring rhetoric, but their function is to snap the reader out of the trance.
He's breaking the spell.
Right. Milton knows we are drawn to the glamour. He exposes those false romantic notions of heroism as nothing more than egotistical magnificence. He is demonstrating that heroic energy, when applied to a bad cause, is not just unadmirable, it is spiritually fatal.
So what does this all mean? We have this incredibly charismatic figure who sounds like a visionary hero, acts like a revolutionary, but is actually a conservative egotist whose rebellion is entirely self-serving. He's a being who slowly, physically decays into a reptile. How are you, the reader, finally supposed to classify him?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the synthesis of all these elements leads to a concept central to our sources, the Miltonic antihero.
The Miltonic antihero. Break down the mechanics of that specific term for us.
Well, in the Miltonic framework, an antihero is a protagonist who possesses all the traits deemed virtuous from a worldly secular standpoint.
Okay.
He has the bravery, the unmatched rhetoric, the physical endurance, and the leadership that human societies typically applaud and, build statues for. But he is entirely malevolent from a theological, universal perspective.
He checks every single box for a Hollywood action hero, but fails the fundamental test for a moral being.
Yes, he is the hero of his own narrative. In Satan's mind, he is the valiant underdog fighting an unbeatable tyrant. But his profound tragedy is that his immense heroic energy is ultimately spent trying to pervert a system of goodness.
And he fails.
Yeah, he does. And the ultimate crushing irony, looping back to the concept of the fortunate fall, is that while he is busy being the architect of his own petty revenge, he is inadvertently fulfilling God's purpose.
Oh, man.
He serves as the necessary friction that allows humanity to experience grace.
He is a completely unwitting tool in the very system he is trying to burn down.
Exactly.
The architecture of that is just brilliant. And, it makes me think about how directly this applies to you, the listener, navigating the world today. Because we are constantly bombarded by people, media, and political movements that flawlessly blend worldly virtue eloquence, defiance, the aesthetic of rebellion, with an underlying massive self-interest.
It is a profound vulnerability in human psychology. We are naturally drawn to absolute confidence. We are mesmerized by someone who can articulate our grievances with just, eloquence.
Milton's Satan is essentially a masterclass in why we must learn to see past egotistical magnificence. Just because someone sounds like a revolutionary or gives a TED Talk about disrupting the status quo doesn't mean their foundation is moral.
Exactly right.
We have to examine the true mechanics of the rhetoric we admire. Like, are they actually fighting for the betterment of humanity? Or are they just a disgruntled middle manager who will burn the building down just to feel the warmth of the flames?
It demands a rigorous level of critical thinking. Milton wanted his readers to feel the intense, seductive pull of Satan's rhetoric in the safe confines of a poem, so their immune systems could recognize that exact same pull in the real-world demagogues around them.
Practice for the real world.
Right. The blending of good and evil in Satan's character is designed to provoke awe, but ultimately to teach discernment.
It's an inoculation against tyranny masked as liberty. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a lingering question, something to mull over that builds on the architecture of Milton's universe.
Let's hear it.
If we accept the premise of the fortunate fall, If Satan's fierce charismatic rebellion inadvertently fulfilled God's plan by disseminating the exact amount of evil needed for humanity to understand and choose goodness, does a perfect system require a charismatic disruptor? Think about it. Can true virtue even exist for humanity if there isn't a compelling, silver-tongued alternative constantly trying to talk us out of it?
That is quite the thought.
We'll let you sit with that one.
Thanks for taking the deep dive with us today.